Hey there, welcome to the review space, and this is my top 10 games that I beat more than once. Not every single video game is worth finishing, and not every game is easy to beat in the first place. I've played so many games that I enjoyed and really like, but to this day have never finished or completed. However, these are the top 10 games that I have played through multiple times and gone through the campaign more than once just because I enjoyed it so much. Here we go. Number 1. God of War. I've beaten this game so many times that I've lost count. Along with God of War 2 and 3 and even the PSP games Chains of Olympus and Ghosts of Sparta, I played through these games on multiple occasions. The first God of War came out in 2005 on the PS2, and I just keep going back to the series time and time again. For one thing, the games aren't that long, clocking in around 9 to 10 hours on average in terms of campaign. The PSP games are especially very short, taking me around 4 hours each to complete. The games on normal difficulty are also quite easy to defeat. It's really not challenging unless you play it on the hardest difficulty. You won't have too many problems. The enemy AI is more of a beat-em-up, hack-and-slash frenzy with recognizable patterns, and after a while you just get used to it. But the puzzle segments can take some time to figure out on your first try. The gameplay and storyline is so accessible and fun that it's always engaging to finish the God of War series over the course of a couple of days. I can't get enough of the God of War games, especially the first one. That's it. God of War, always played it, always go back to it. Number 2. Super Mario RPG. Came out in 1996 on the Super Nintendo. Easily one of the best games of the 16-bit era. Super Mario RPG was also one of the last high-profile games to release during the Super Nintendo lifespan. Super Mario RPG was never the most complicated or difficult RPG, but it was a fine blend of great storytelling and accessible gameplay. The game had several characters to choose from, with a variety of attacks, and playing through the game is always rewarding. The boss fights can be tough sometimes, but it's no big deal after a while. The music, the style, the Nintendo charm, it's all there with a bit of Final Fantasy influence as well. You get a satisfying ending, and then you get the credits roll presented with this lengthy parade, and gave you a sense of accomplishment every time that you finished it. Mario RPG isn't the hardest game in the world, but it's fun enough to play through many times over. I can never get tired of Super Mario RPG. Number 3. Dead Space. Came out in 2008. The original Dead Space came out way back in 2008, and I've beaten this game around 3 times or so. This may be my favorite survival horror game of all time, and I feel it's even better than Resident Evil 4. The weapons, the abilities, the creepy-looking enemies, the setting, the storyline, it's all very immersive and full of sci-fi horror influences. The replay value comes from the New Game Plus option, which basically let you restart the campaign with your previous upgrades and armor after finishing it the first time around. All those horrible, almost annoying enemies that killed you multiple times from your first newbie run are now easily disposed by stronger weapons and tougher abilities. I also enjoyed Dead Space 2, but I've only finished that one time. That's a fun game as well. Definitely the first Dead Space though, I just kept going back to it. It's a very fun, replay value, awesome game. Number 4. The Pokemon series. You're talking about the multiple generations, starting all the way from Pokemon Blue, and then Crystal, and Ruby, and Platinum. Ever since the late 90s, I've enjoyed the main Pokemon series in almost every generation. The number one goal for me was always to defeat and gather up all the gym badges, beat the gym leaders, and ultimately conquer the Elite Four. Thankfully, the AI has become increasingly better over the years and got more challenging over time. The first time around, it was actually quite easy. Wasn't very challenging. And the charming thing about Pokemon is that you have to take these 6 monster creatures in your party, you raise them to become 6 badass killers by the end of the game, and then you're kicking everybody's ass. I know you're supposed to catch them all and gather every single Pokemon character, but that never really appealed to me. It was all about destroying the Elite Four, kicking the champion's ass, and being the Pokemon League champion myself. just defeating the hardest and most difficult characters in the game. It's the traditional RPG story, starting with nothing. You begin with nothing and then you overcome adversity. You get stronger after hours and hours and days and maybe weeks of training. Pokemon was never the most refined series and actually felt formulaic as the years piled on, but in its prime, Pokemon was the hottest handheld video game since Tetris. I don't think I'll fully outgrow Pokemon, and to some degree I'll always go back to it, but definitely at the highest peak of Pokemon, it was very engaging, very addictive. Number 5. Bioshock. Came out originally in 2007. I've beaten Bioshock on the PS3 a couple of times already, and it was always a blast to play through. I understand why some people feel it's a bit overrated, but the charm of Bioshock isn't about the gameplay necessarily. Most FPS fanatics these days are used to Call of Duty or Halo or even something like a Gears of War, fast-paced, frenetic action in a multiplayer setting. Bioshock is more about an immersive single-player campaign that allows the players to soak in the beautiful environment and captivating setting. Bioshock is all about the atmosphere and quirky characters, and Rapture has become one of the most interesting video game locations I've ever seen. It feels like a real world, but not really. A surreal underwater city full of deranged psychos and freaks and killers. If you've never played through Bioshock 1 or 2, you missed out big time. Bioshock is definitely an amazing single-player campaign. Number 6. Manhunt II. Came out in 2007 on the PS2. And actually multiple consoles, if I'm not mistaken, also on the PSP and the Wii. I've never tried those versions though. I think this is one of the most underrated games on the PlayStation 2. Manhunt 2 was also quite the violent, stealth-killing experience. The Manhunt series was never the most commercially marketable, and while the first Manhunt, caused a lot of controversy over the hyper-violence, the second Manhunt seemed very overlooked by the time it came out, in part because of the next generation, the 360 and the PS3 and the Wii were already in full effect. By that time, and the dying phase of the PlayStation 2, by 2007, you got the PS2 graphics, they peaked and reached their limit. So Manhunt 2 featured some of the best detailed environments and graphics on the aging PlayStation 2 console. I've beaten Manhunt 2 a couple of times, thanks in part to its great presentation. You really felt like your character is this brutal killer, able to, hide in the dark corners of a room and then snuff out his enemies in a very visceral, intimate fashion. The stage designs and the levels are very dark and grimy, just full of unpleasant energy that a human killing machine just thrives on. You're like a serial killer pretty much. But the thing is, all your enemies are very deranged, evil psychos too. So it's justified in my opinion. It's justified violence. It's not like you're killing innocent people. I don't know if they'll ever release another installment in the Manhunt series, but it would be very welcome for this generation. I can't wait if they ever put out a Manhunt 3. That would be amazing. Number 7. Beatdown, Fists of Vengeance, came out in 2005 on the 6th generation Xbox and PS2. This is another underrated gem from the 6th gen. Fist of Vengeance is basically this excellent beat-em-up. I've beaten it a couple of times. I plan to actually play it even more and beat it a few more times. The game came out back in mid-2005, well into the lifespan of the Xbox and the PS2. There's many things to do in the game that make it really worthwhile for any action beat-em-up fans, especially kids that grew up on games like Final Fight and Streets of Rage. The game is set in this pseudo-open-world, free-roaming environment that lets you beat the crap out of enemies. You basically just run around, you fight people here and there, you gain experience and notoriety as a gangster, you customize your appearance once in a while, advance through the storyline. It's the little things, though, that make the game so addictive. You got the mental stress factor after, you lose to the same enemy over and over again, then you get stressed out and you gotta beat that enemy, and you kind of have to prove yourself in order to cure yourself of the mental stress factor. You can recruit other enemies to your team, after defeating them. You can team build, basically, and create your own crew. You basically have to maneuver your way around the city without attracting too much police attention, and you do this in several ways. You gotta be very stealthy. And just basically having to maneuver your way across the city without attracting too much police attention. This is the kind of beat-em-up experience that we need more of, but unfortunately, the genre itself has waned significantly over the past 10 years. I highly doubt we'll ever get a Beatdown Part 2, but this one is definitely a classic from the Xbox and PS2 generation. I love it. Number 8. Rainbow Six Vegas 2. Came out in 2008. This was one of the more enjoyable FPS games ever, in my opinion. This has a great single-player campaign. Vegas 2 is just simply fun. It's not so much about the storyline, though. I don't really care much about the story, but it's all about the gameplay, the cover system, progressing through the levels, and, defeating the stages. The enemy AI isn't too difficult in the campaign, unless you're playing the terrorist hunting mode, but the stage progression and the methodical action is what keeps me coming back for more. Because the game was released nearly 7 years ago, the graphics have aged quite terribly, and it doesn't look nearly as good as it did way back in 2008. It actually looks very dated. Hopefully they put out a new installment in the Vegas games, or just a new Rainbow Six with the same level of quality. The gameplay is there, the terrorist hunting challenging modes. Hopefully all of that is there. I don't know if they'll ever release a new Rainbow Six. It's definitely a missed franchise. The Vegas series may be the best FPS single-player campaign I've personally ever played, just because of the slower-paced approach. You gotta take time to basically flush out the enemies with tactical precision, instead of just blasting away at every single enemy on screen in a mindless, shoot-'em-up arcadey fashion. Number 9. The Prince of Persia Trilogy. Came out in 2003 originally, the first one anyway, Sands of Time, on the 6th generation, the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. Later re-released on the PS3 HD. The Sands of Time trilogy, including Sands of Time, Warrior Within, Two Thrones, basically some of the better high-quality platforming experiences from the 6th generation era. These are classic platform puzzle games, in my opinion. I played through these games on the PS2 before, but then I also got the PS3 and the HD versions many years later. They were a blast to play way back then, and they've aged really well over time in terms of gameplay. I mean, I can pick it up right now and still enjoy it, and still have an amazing wall jumping, wall scaling action. You got the time rewinding gameplay, which is very addictive, actually. I mean, it allows you to backtrack dangerous falls and deadly jumps through the steep levels. I like the platforming. Like I said before, it's very addictive and fun, actually. You jump around these impossible heights, and the best real-life parkour athletes can't even dream of doing. I doubt that the Prince of Persia series will ever really bounce back as a franchise, but definitely for a few years in the early mid-2000s, this was an amazing platforming set of games, and it was a must-play, in my opinion, from the 6th generation. Number 10. Tekken, Street Fighter, Dead or Alive, Mortal Kombat, Soul Calibur, and many other fighting games from the 1990s all the way to the present. I don't know if it's cheating, or, if these actually really count, but fighting games have tremendous replay value for me. At first glance, it's very easy to finish a fighting game campaign, right? I mean, you got the story mode, which usually is in the arcade mode. It's just roughly 10 to 20 minutes of going through the several opponents and beating the final boss after like 15 minutes, and then voila! You got the ending, you got the credits rolling, and that's it. The game is done after you beat it with a single character. However, I do feel like beating a fighting game, in order to truly complete it, is more than just finishing it with one character. In order to actually truly finish a game like a Tekken or a Street Fighter, you gotta beat the game with every single character and basically unlock every single fucking ending. I mean, get every single ending, unlock every single character, and beat the game with them as well. Fighting games originated from the arcade experience. You got the fast twitch gameplay that was basically designed to eat up as many of your coins as possible. They weren't always easy, and oftentimes by the second or third opponent became very difficult to beat. So fighting games, they seem very quick and easy to finish, especially if you're really good at it, but it's really more about the endless fighting experience, like in Ghost Battle or the Versus multiplayer. It's not so much about the story. It's kind of like Call of Duty. You know, most people don't even buy Call of Duty for the campaign or the single player. They buy it for the multiplayer. They can play with many different people around the world. Well, fighting games sort of have that same energy, that same experience of, I'll just keep playing this endlessly, over and over again until I get bored of it after, like, an hour, a couple of hours into this game. Alright, so that's it. That's my top 10 games that I finished more than once. Multiple times, at least a couple of times. I don't know if you've noticed, but yeah, a lot of these games I haven't really finished, like 7 or 8 times. It's very difficult now. I don't think I've beaten the game, like, more than 10 times, to be honest with you. In terms of beating it from the beginning and then completing it all the way from the beginning all the way to the fucking end, it just doesn't happen for me. I have way too many games to play, and I just don't have enough time to go through the same games over and over again. And I don't think I've ever encountered a single game that I've played through like 20 times, from beginning to end. It just never happened for me. I enjoy so many games, but it's like I can't really sit here and play Devil May Cry like 500,000 times. It just doesn't... I don't have that in me. I'll play a game maybe once, maybe twice if I really like it, on a very rare occasion, but most of the time it's like I'll play through a game, I'll beat a game once, and that's it. Beat a game and finish it just one time, and then just fucking move on. I mean, there's no reason to play a lot of these games, they just don't have that replay value. I guess an honorable mention would be something like StarCraft. I love the StarCraft games, the first one, and then Brood War. I've played through those multiple times, but even a game like that, a classic RTS like that, that's more about the multiplayer experience. The online versus modes and the user map settings and, that kind of online multiplayer setting instead of the main campaign, which isn't too bad. It's actually quite fun, but again, it's more about the multiplayer more than anything else. Thanks for watching The Review Space, the most underrated channel on YouTube. For more videos, check out youtube.com/TheReviewSpace.